Absence, though often feared, has a peculiar power over the heart. We are inclined to believe that if something or someone is out of sight, they will soon be out of mind, but the truth is far more complex. When a man chooses to walk away, whether by choice, by impulse, or by circumstance, he does not sever the ties that bind his heart so easily. In the quiet of separation, something stirs within him. He may leave with certainty, but he soon finds that distance does not erase attachment. Rather, it magnifies it. The mind, when left alone, becomes an artist, painting over reality with the colors of memory and longing. In the presence of a person, the mind takes them for granted, noticing their flaws, the small annoyances, the predictable routines. But in their absence, these minor irritations fade, leaving behind only the warmth of familiarity, the laughter that once filled the silence, the way their presence brought a quiet steadiness to life. Distance turns the ordinary into the extraordinary, making a man realize that what he once overlooked was, in fact, invaluable. Men, like all people, crave freedom. They believe that stepping away, creating space, will grant them clarity. But what they often discover is that the space they thought would bring relief only amplifies the void. The heart is not designed for emptiness. It reaches out, searching for what once was. The deeper the silence, the louder the echoes of the past. What once seemed easy to leave behind becomes a quiet ache, a whisper in the back of the mind that refuses to be ignored. It is a peculiar paradox of the human soul that we understand value best in retrospect. A man who thought he needed distance to find himself soon realizes that in leaving, he has lost something far greater: the warmth of a familiar voice, the gentle touch of understanding, the knowing glance of someone who truly sees him. These things, so easily dismissed in the moment, become treasures once they are gone. And so the longing begins. But longing alone does not compel a man to return. It is not merely nostalgia or sentimentality that draws him back, but the realization of what was real. If a connection was built on something deeper than fleeting passion, if it was woven with threads of respect, understanding, and genuine affection, then absence does not diminish it. Instead, it refines it. Like fire purifying gold, distance strips away the trivial and leaves behind only what is true. The man who returns after absence is often one who has seen, with greater clarity, what he once had. Thus, absence is not always the end. It is, at times, the proving ground of love, the test of what is real. If a man returns, it is not merely because he misses the past, but because he recognizes its worth in a way he never did before. And if he does not return, then perhaps absence has done its other work. It has revealed that what was lost was never meant to be kept. The illusion of freedom, how men often mistake absence for independence, only to realize what they've lost. There is a certain thrill in the idea of breaking free. Many men, when they step away from a relationship, believe they are claiming their independence. They feel a sense of relief and unburdening, as if they have shed a weight they were carrying. They tell themselves that they are now free to do as they please, that they are no longer tethered to expectation or responsibility. For a time, this illusion satisfies them. They revel in the novelty of their autonomy, mistaking solitude for strength, believing that in walking away, they have gained something rather than lost something. But freedom, when misunderstood, quickly turns hollow. What at first feels like liberation soon reveals itself to be loneliness. A man may fill his days with distractions, work, hobbies, fleeting connections, but in the quiet moments, when the noise fades and he is left with nothing but his own thoughts, he begins to see the truth. Independence is not merely the absence of obligation, it is the presence of purpose. And if his departure has left him wandering without direction, then what he has gained is not freedom, but emptiness. It is a strange thing the way we often do not recognize the true nature of love until we stand outside of it. While in its presence, love may seem like a limitation, a series of compromises, an endless negotiation of desires. But once removed, love is revealed for what it truly is: a foundation, an anchor, a source of meaning. A man who has walked away believing he was escaping confinement often discovers too late that what he left behind was not a cage but a home. The illusion of freedom is most powerful in the beginning, when the heart has not yet begun to long and the mind has not yet begun to reflect. But with time, the absence of a loved one does not simply leave a space, it creates an awareness. He begins to notice the way his laughter lacks its former depth, the way his victories feel strangely hollow without someone to share them with, the way even the most exciting moments are tinged with something missing. He may have once thought that absence would bring him clarity, but what it truly brings is contrast. It holds up a mirror, revealing what he took for granted, what he misunderstood, what he lost in his pursuit of something he never truly needed. There comes a moment when the illusion shatters. He realizes that independence was never about being alone, but about knowing who he is and what matters to him. And more often than not, what matters is not the freedom to walk away, but the wisdom to recognize where he belongs. At this point, regret creeps in, not just for the relationship he left behind, but for the time wasted believing he did not need it. The realization dawns that true strength is not in solitude, but in connection. That true freedom is not found in escape, but in commitment to something greater than oneself. And so, many men return, not because they are weak, not because they have failed in their pursuit of independence, but because they have seen its limits. They return because they now understand that love, far from being a chain, is what gives life its depth and meaning. But not all are given a second chance. Some find that the person they left behind has moved forward, that the door they once walked out of is now closed. And in that moment, they understand fully what they once thought was freedom was in truth the greatest loss of all. Memory is a patient teacher. It does not force its lessons upon us all at once, but reveals them slowly, often when we least expect it. A man who walks away from love may believe that he has left it behind entirely. In the moment, he may feel justified, convinced that his decision was rational, that he will move forward without looking back. But memory does not function on command. It does not obey the will. It lingers in the quiet corners of the mind, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And when it does not bring mere recollection. It brings feeling. At first, these memories are faint, like whispers in the distance, a familiar song on the radio, a scent in the air, the echo of laughter in a crowded room. These small, seemingly insignificant moments stir something within him. He may brush them aside, dismiss them as fleeting nostalgia, but memory is persistent. It returns again and again, stronger each time until he can no longer ignore it. What he thought was buried is, in truth, very much alive. The power of memory lies not just in what it recalls, but in how it reshapes the past. Time has a curious way of softening the sharp edges of old conflicts and magnifying what was good. The arguments, the frustrations, the moments of doubt that once seemed so significant begin to fade. In their place, the warmth of love, the kindness of small gestures, the depth of understanding once shared come rushing back. He begins to remember not just the person he left behind, but the way she made him feel. Safe, known, valued. And in that realization, a quiet ache begins to grow. What many men fail to understand is that memory is not merely a collection of past events, but a force that shapes the present. The emotions that resurface are not just echoes of what was, they become a living part of who he is. He may have believed he could move on, but his own heart tells him otherwise. He may have thought he was free from the past, but memory reminds him that the past is not something we escape. It is something we carry with us, whether we acknowledge it or not. This is why so many men, after time apart, find themselves drawn back to the love they once knew. Not because they are weak, not because they cannot survive on their own, but because memory has taught them something they did not understand before, that love is not easily replaced. that no amount of distraction, no new relationship, no pursuit of independence can erase the depth of a true connection. He begins to see that what he left behind was not simply a chapter in his life, but a part of his very being. And the more he remembers, the more he realizes that some things are not meant to be forgotten. But memory, for all its power, is not enough. It can lead a man back, but it cannot undo the past. If he is to return, it must not be merely because he longs for what was, but because he is ready to be what he once was not. Wiser, more aware, more grateful. For memory is not just a reminder of what was lost. It is an opportunity to reclaim what still might be. And if he is fortunate, he will find that love, though wounded, is not always gone. That sometimes, when one truly understands its worth, it is not too late to begin again. There is a quiet force within every soul, a pull that guides us back to the places and people where we once felt most alive. We call it nostalgia, longing, or even fate. But at its core, it is something deeper, a homing instinct, a yearning for what once gave us warmth and belonging. A man may wander far from love, convinced that his journey is one of self-discovery, but the heart is not so easily deceived. It knows where it belongs, and in time, despite all efforts to suppress or ignore it, the pull becomes undeniable. In the beginning, the road away from love seems clear and full of promise. He tells himself he is doing what is best, that he needs space to grow, to chase ambitions, to explore possibilities. He may immerse himself in new experiences, convincing himself that change is necessary. But no matter how far he travels, physically, emotionally, or mentally, something within him remains tethered to the past. He may not acknowledge it at first, but deep down, the heart has already mapped its way back. The world is full of distractions, of fleeting joys and shallow affections, but these things do not nourish the soul in the same way love once did. Over time, the excitement of newness fades, and in its place comes an unsettling emptiness. It is in these moments, when the noise quiets, when the distractions lose their luster, that he begins to feel the weight of what he left behind. The realization creeps in slowly. What he was searching for out there, he had already found in her. And so, without fully understanding why, his heart begins to turn back. This homing instinct is not merely about romance. It is about something far more fundamental. It is about belonging. Every person, no matter how independent, desires a place where they are truly known, where they do not have to explain themselves, where they are understood in a way no one else can replicate. This is the power of a true connection. It creates a sanctuary, a place where the soul finds rest. And once a man has known such a refuge, he will always feel its absence when it is gone. But returning is not always simple. Time may have changed the landscape of love. The door he once walked through so easily may no longer be open, or if it is, it may not lead to the same place it once did. This is the risk of wandering too far for too long. The heart may find its way back, but the question remains, will there still be a home waiting for it? A man who truly understands what he left behind does not return expecting everything to be as it was. He returns humbled, knowing that the journey back is not only about finding love again, but proving he is worthy of it. And yet, for all the uncertainty, for all the lessons learned too late, the soul continues to seek what is real. No matter how far he has gone, no matter what mistakes he has made, the heart's homing instinct remains. Because love, true, deep, abiding love, is not something that fades with distance. It waits, it lingers, and for those who finally understand its worth, it welcomes them home. There is a great misunderstanding about love, a belief that the mere act of returning is proof enough of affection. Many men leave and later come back, and those who wait for them often mistake this return for a sign of devotion. But love is not measured by the journey back alone. It is measured by the heart with which one returns. A man may come back for many reasons, but not all of them are rooted in love. Some return out of loneliness, some out of guilt, and some simply because the world outside was not as kind as they had hoped. True affection is tested not by the return itself, but by the reason behind it. A man who leaves a love he once claimed and then returns must ask himself, why am I here? Is it because he truly sees the value of what he lost, because he has grown, learned, and come to understand that what he left behind was irreplaceable? Or is he simply seeking comfort, familiarity, or an escape from the loneliness his absence created? Love is not a revolving door, allowing one to step in and out as convenience dictates. It is not an inn where one can rest after a long journey only to leave again when the road calls. Love is a commitment, and true affection is proven in the intention, not just the action. This is where many falter. They believe that saying, I miss you, should be enough, that the weight of regret alone should grant them passage back into the heart they abandoned. But words are easy. Regret is easy. What is difficult, what is rare, is transformation. The true test of love is not in the longing, but in the change it inspires. If a man returns with the same heart, the same fears, the same patterns that caused him to leave in the first place, then his return is not an act of love, it is a cycle waiting to repeat itself. For the one who is left behind, there is also a lesson. It is not enough to welcome someone back simply because they return. One must ask, have they truly come back, or are they just passing through? Are they here because they see you, value you, and choose you, or are they here because the world outside was cold and unfamiliar? The heart must be wise enough to distinguish between a return driven by love and one driven by mere need. The former is a gift, the latter is a borrowed presence, one that will disappear again when the seasons change. To truly return is not just to walk back into someone's life. It is to rebuild trust, to prove through action that absence was not in vain, that something was learned, that the leaving was not a waste, but a lesson that made love even more precious. It is to stand before the one who is hurt and not simply say, I am back, but to show I am different. True affection does not demand to be received. It seeks to be worthy of being received. And so the test of true affection is not whether a man comes back, but whether he should. It is in whether he has looked at himself with honesty, whether he has faced his own shortcomings, whether he is now willing to love with a heart that is steady, committed, and unafraid. Love is not proven in the departure nor in the return, but in what is done when the chance to love again is finally within reach. Only then does the return hold meaning. Only then does it deserve to be called love.